I see that we are going live, which should be working, and now YouTube is telling me that we're live. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming to Computer Science Education Week tech panel. We are all of these 8-bit characters. Let me make sure that this stream is in fact working. And the status check will be back soon. I always get so nervous when these are starting. I never know if they're actually going live or not. But if it is working, we have 17 people. So this is going to be broken up into 2 parts. The first part is going to be a panel with all of these really cool people here who are going to introduce themselves in a second. They all have really interesting jobs and are really talented and really cool. And then so we're going to talk to them, and they're going to tell you about their work and everything like that. It's okay. I just got confirmation that this stream is working, so my anxiety doesn't have to be too worried about that. And then around 6:40, 6:45, we're going to switch over to a coding portion and do a coding workshop. So I sent this out to everyone that was doing coding club in the spring. For those of you who were there for that, it's going to be really similar. We're just gonna go into the Vidcode workstation and code a filter together that tracks your face. So that'll be around 6:45. I am Leandra, so I am this character that is moving around the table right now. And I'll give everyone else a chance to introduce themselves too. Let's do reverse alphabetical order. So starting with Ruthie, and then Rachel, Miles, Jane.
Awesome. Thanks, Leandra. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. What should I say? I'm Ruthie. I'm in New York City. And I'll start from most recent. I'll go backwards. So right now, I have my own startup that helps people with their sleep. Before that, I worked as a software engineer and developer advocate for 4 years at a company called Warby Parker. So that was a lot of fun, a really cool company to learn from. Before that, I worked in fintech, helping small business owners get access to finances. That was my first software engineering job. I did a programming boot camp after I graduated college, and I studied anthropology and film and environmental studies in college. So when I was in middle school, me and my sister made Harry Potter websites together, and then I kind of forgot about it for a long time until after I graduated college. And it's really great people like Leandra and all of you today, and I'm so excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I guess I'm an interactive developer at Vidcode, and right before that, I went to undergrad studying art history, and I went to grad school for exploring art and tech. So yeah.
Hey, I'm Miles. I'm this little 8-bit character moving around. I am currently the lead developer at Vidcode. So we make all that stuff that you're going to be working on that face tracking thing later. Before that, I was a developer at another startup called Lightwell. So I've actually only worked at startups since leaving college. And before that, I was going to college for computer science. So I did major in computer science. My major was computer science, and my specific track was vision and graphics. I love animated movies. I love all things computer graphics and computer vision. And I like working at Vidcode. Nice to meet you all.
Cool. And then last in alphabetical order, reverse, Jane.
Hey everybody, I'm Gene. I'm a site reliability engineer at Google. Basically, me and a group of people help make sure that our particular service at Google stays up and running. If there are any issues, we run in there and try to resolve them, fix those problems.
Cool. And so Romaniac in the chat said this is so cool, which is very nice. Thank you, Romaniac. Yeah, so I sent out a thing of questions. I didn't get too many, so I sort of just wrote my own down. But if you all do want to ask questions, which I would encourage because it'll help me think of things, you can write them in the chat and we can see them. Trina actually asked one, which is how many people work at Vidcode, and there are 7 of us total. Oh, and I think Allie is here as well, rolling around the bottom. when she joins, she can introduce herself. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Like I said, I have sort of a list of questions here, but like one of the things that I wanted to focus on, because I know that you all like work on different things that are like outside of your jobs. And a lot of those combine like programming and really social things. And I think that's really cool. I think it's really fun when programming and like creating with technology can be social. So I think it would be cool if you all sort of talked about that. Miles, I know you went to an event either last weekend or 2 weekends ago that was sort of connecting programming and making things and like civic service, I guess, for lack of a better word. I don't know. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, totally. No, I'd love to. So yeah, it was last weekend, and I spent my Saturday volunteering to build websites for, in this case, it was an organization that promotes the rights of transgender people in India. And it's part of this much larger set of volunteer days, I guess, by a group that I'm part of for LGBTQ plus professionals in tech. And they do these days 4 times a year where we all get together, they organize people into teams, and it's not just developers like me, but also designers and copywriters and project managers, so people who know how to organize a tech project so everything gets done. And they put us all into teams, so there's enough of each person who knows each kind of role, and then we work together over the course of the day to make a website. And I've done it twice now. It's always a lot of fun because not only are we doing something cool for a good cause, and it's a bunch of tech skills that I already have, so it feels good to use them in that way, but also I get to meet a bunch of people that I wouldn't have met otherwise. And we all hung out on Zoom after the event, after we had built the website, and we just kind of talked for a while. And yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was a great way to spend the Saturday.
Cool. Did you get to like see the final project live when you were done?
So it's not live yet because it needs final confirmation from the advocates in India who actually commissioned the whole thing. But we did get to see it kind of in staging, sort of halfway to production.
Cool. So there's probably a lot of students watching this who are learning to code in school. If they wanted to apply what they're learning in sort of this like cool civic tech way, how would you, I guess civic isn't the right word because that sort of implies government, but this sort of way, what would you recommend them looking at?
Honestly, web development, just because everybody needs a website, right? Like if you have something that you want to do, or if you want to connect people, or you want to get something out there, you generally need a website. And if you learn some pretty simple skills to make a website, then you can just make that happen for yourself or for your friend or for an organization that you care about. You can give that to them. And giving that to organizations that I believe in is why I like to do those volunteer days. But you don't have to do it in a structured way. You can just do it for like your friends or something cool that you want to share with the world.
Cool. Yeah, do the rest of our panelists want to go around and talk about things that they care about or like ways that they are trying to change the world with coding or tech?
Well, I can jump in just because what Miles was saying made me think about my initial connection to programming. So, in high school, I would say, and in college too, I never really thought of myself as like like that kind of person. I was more like a social science person, social studies, history, art, stuff like that. And after I graduated college, I worked in advertising in my first job, and was just trying to like look to connect with different people. So I started attending meetups, including tech meetups, and I happened to go to an arts and technology meetup, and then met some people involved in civic tech. And then through that, I probably met people like Miles, when I was like, oh, like this person's so cool, and I totally see myself in them. And if they're doing programming, then maybe that could be something that I would like to do as well. And it was already something I wanted to learn, but I just didn't really know that you could actually learn it after college at that point in time. And yeah, there were so many really cool ways right off the bat to get involved without knowing a lot of programming at all, like different hackathons and meetups and ways to kind of help, like, open street maps where you like do different like mapping and like different events where you could work with cool organizations to help them right off the bat. And that really helped me also figure out, like, for me, the way I learned programming and, still learned like having a project and then working backwards and figuring out like, okay, if I want to bring X to life, like I need to learn A, B, and C. Like that was very helpful for me. And I recommend that if you're a project-based learner as well. And so, yeah, there's so many exciting things you can do once you start having those tools, and there's ways to get involved at every level. And so I also encourage you, if you do get into that field, to really go to those events and share yourself, because I'm sure there'll be someone else who sees themselves in you and is like, oh, I can do that too. And that's really powerful.
Yeah, so Rachel actually went to one of my favorite grad schools that is focused a lot on like both sort of changing the world of technology and also just like creative coding, which those of you who are like taking Vidcode classes in school or Scratch classes have sort of been exposed to. But I don't know, Rachel, do you just want to talk about that and some of your favorite projects that you saw there and worked on?
Okay. I guess a lot of my projects during my time at school focused on self-expression and storytelling using web development, because I feel like a lot of people have this perception where it's sort of just like used in a more commercial setting, like just making like a website for a business or something like that. So I did explore making like, I guess, a few games or things that just like are more personal for me. Like I think one of the sites I made was just like a small app where I just list down all the things that I love in my life and present it to other people, and like people can add to it as well. And another game I made was like sort of exploring how I felt a little uncomfortable with how I presented myself online, and it was just sort of a more cathartic experience for myself where I can just kind of like make information that I present about myself, like my Facebook photos, like disappear in like this poop of dust. So that was kind of fun. And I think a lot of my other favorite projects was just exploring like creative code. I think ITP does a lot of stuff with the processing foundation, P5. So I guess maybe adding on to like what we were talking about earlier, I think getting involved with open source projects is also a great way to kind of get a start, because I really liked P5 in particular because they're so open to artists or people who don't code, and there's a lot of different ways to get involved even outside of coding as well. Like people like would contribute to documentation or like making little tutorials or doing like community management. So
yeah, and not everyone watching might know what open source development is. If someone wants to describe that a little bit more. Rachel.
Okay. I guess I might be getting the definition wrong, but for me, open source is where it's like a project where anyone within a community can contribute to it, and usually I think a lot of these are on GitHub.
Yeah, I really like the idea of like open source technology sort of in schools as well. Like schools are so focused right now on like privacy and privacy law, and I think like having more open source technologies in school could be a way to sort of start to deal with that without like having these central servers that like bigger companies are running. That's sort of an aside. Cool. So I guess what advice, so these hackathons, or let's say starting an open source project, what advice would you give for students watching this who are thinking about like going to their first hackathon or thinking about starting to work on their first open source project? Or just thinking about starting to work on a project with their friends that is related to code?
I can probably answer something in there. I actually was going to double down on what you were saying about open source projects. I think they are a really great way to kind of get started in the community. Also, it's a really great way to use a lot of the skills you've learned. Let's say you've just learned you've learned some Python or something, and you've gotten yourself fairly comfortable with using it, but you want to learn more. One great way that I've found to learn more code in general, to fully understand something, is to really break apart somebody else's code. So when you start off on another project, you get to delve into their code. You can even ask them, try to get some line of communication open with them and sort of figure out what's going on. It gives you insight into how things work and also how other people resolve issues and problems too. So it's a really cool way to sort of expand how you do things and how you understand things. I guess that doesn't really actually answer the question that you said. As far as like capture the flags go, I don't know if you like a capture the flag is an event you go to when you try to. What would you say that is like? You try to break into somebody's system that's set up so that there are security holes in it, so you can capture an item in the back of a server or something, or around there.
I would say
Those
like,
are really, yeah.
I would say like a capture the flag is like different than a hackathon. Yeah, so like a hackathon, you'd go and like make something like what Miles went to, and then I would say like a capture the flag is like more sort of like security focused. Would you say like you're more like like trying to break stuff versus like make stuff?
Yeah, you could say break stuff. I think of it more like you try to find out how something works, and then you figure out how to actually get around it. It's not necessarily breaking it per se, but it's sort of putting yourself in a situation where you're going to really understand what's actually happening in the system, which is kind of cool. And it's also like it can be very challenging, very difficult every single time you go into it and you learn something new, but you work with other people. And my thing has always been to like hang out with people who are way smarter than you, so you generally feel like you're always like learning something. And hackathons definitely let you do that because there are some smart people who hang out like capture the flags and hackathons and things.
You know, Gene, that's actually really cool. You should. I've never heard of a capture the flag event myself. Other ideas that I just had as you were talking about project inspiration. So, you know, I think you could go in two directions. You could think like, what's something I really want to have in my life that'd be cool, right? There's like this thing out there, but I wish it like did this other thing, or it'd just be cool to build my own version of X. You know, like something that you really want or really think should exist in the world. Or you could go totally the reverse. There's this hackathon that happens in New York and a few other cities as well. That's basically like, it's called like the stupid stuff no one needs hackathon. And like the idea is to kind of free yourself from anything important. And a lot of innovation actually happens when you're like sitting with your friends. You're like, what if we did this really crazy thing? Like one of the things that programming really helped me with, I was just like reimagining myself as a different kind of person. So like after programming, I also got really into biology. And like that's something I hadn't really studied since high school and didn't really have good teachers or get why I should care about it in high school. And I got really into this like citizen science, community biology lab scene, DIY bio scene after I got into programming. And I took this class where we did gene editing, which was super cool. And the teacher of the class, he and some friends were hanging out one night and they're like, what if we could engineer a spicy tomato? Like, how could we use this gene editing technique called CRISPR to do that? And like they worked backwards and like actually were able to do it. So a lot of times it's like a conversation like that. Like, what if we could do this crazy thing? Like, you know, I can think of a lot, actually there are a lot of examples of innovations that happen that way, like lab grown meat or DNA data storage, like really crazy, like sci-fi stuff that like happens from these like crazy conversations you have with your friends. So I think you can really go in either direction, like something that's super important or something that's like super silly and kind of funny and makes you laugh.
And I think you don't have to start with like the craziest idea ever. Like as long as you like start brainstorming and like you get to those, which is fun. Like I think it's like, yeah, like it's cool to just start sort of making things with your friends and like talking about what you would want to make. And
Leandra actually did this really cool project. My birthday's Halloween, and I threw a haunted art house a few years ago, and I invited different friends who wanted to create experiences around Halloween. And so Leandra built this cool visualization of ghosts and spooky images. And so like sometimes having like a concept like that gives your friends an excuse to bring something to life that they might not have done.
Yeah, that was a very cool haunted house. There were a lot of like tech projects there, like creative tech projects. Mine was done, if you all want to make your own kind of like spooky visualization. Mine was done with A-frame. So I got like jack-o'-lantern images off of like that Google 3D library and then animated them with A-frame. And that made like kind of my spooky visualization. And then there was someone else there who made some kind of like machine learning ghosts with like drawing. I think they were drawing like dead bodies or something, which I guess is, I don't know, a weird thing to talk about on the stream. But that was sort of interesting too. So definitely a lot of, like you were talking about, like non-commercial ways to kind of use like programming and technology, like haunted houses. Definitely a really fun way. That was awesome. So I guess Ruthie, go ahead.
Oh, I just had one last thought, which was another thing that you can do if you just think that you're full out of ideas is choose something that makes your life easier. Like, see if there's, some little aspect of your life that you feel like it could be improved by, some little bit of technology, a browser extension, a program on your calculator. The very first thing I ever coded was on my TI-85 graphing calculator in high school, because I was taking a math class that was doing some matrix multiplication, and I was like, I don't feel like doing all this multiplication by hand. And so I figured out how to write just a super simple program that would do it for me. I didn't even know I was coding. I was just helping myself do my math homework. And that ended up being my entryway into programming. So yeah, if you can find something that will help you in the future, if you do it now, you'll have like an extra incentive to get it done. It'll be, extra cool when you finally finish it.
Yeah. No, 100%, just like automating stuff away. And then robots can do your work for you while you're off living your life. Yeah. I don't know. Does anyone else want to talk about like that sort of thing? I have a question for Ruthie, if not. Okay, cool. So Ruthie, you were someone who was working at a really big company and then sort of like left to go the startup route and make something from scratch. I would love to hear a little bit more about that experience and what the change was like from like a larger company to doing more of a startup.
Yeah, I guess for me, so my first programming job I was actually the first employee at this startup that helped small business owners get access to financing. So I didn't really know that, and my parents both had their own businesses, so I knew like there's things I really liked about that environment. And then Warby Parker was just a really cool company. I loved the chief technology officer. I met him through another person I know, and was like, he's really cool. I'd love to just work with him and on the team he created. And he really made a environment where everybody could bring their full selves to work and like, be fun and quirky, and like there were a lot of opportunities to learn and share and grow. And even when people left the company, it was really celebrated. So I really appreciated kind of the cultural aspects of that. And they thought a lot too about like how we all built our skills as engineers and technical thinkers, and shared that with one another. We had all these guilds, like the software architecture guild, the data science guild, and so on. So I really liked all of that stuff. And I was there for about 4 years. When I started there, I built healthcare technology, like an electronic health record system to manage eye exams, and then built a lot of stuff in that space, which was very interesting, and explored all these kind of like new cutting edge things like serverless architecture. So that was a fun excuse to do that. And then at the last few months I was there, I did a job that was more like developer evangelism. So what that means is sort of like, it's a little bit different for a company by company. A lot of the time, if companies have APIs, which are like application programming interfaces, more or less like how you get two systems to talk to each other, then like the company that has one of those will like have people whose job it is to get engineers to be excited to use their system. So that's kind of like marketing to engineers. So I did a little bit of that, except it was a little bit more like kind of building the company's technology brand, helping explain the company's technical challenges, giving engineers at the company opportunities to host meetups, give tech talks, and kind of getting engaged with the tech community at large, which was a really, really big part of my experience when I was there. But yeah, I always thought it'd be fun to do my own thing after that. And yeah, I feel like being able to know how to build my own technology solutions, and then having all the kind of like parts of myself that I had before I got into programming made me feel really confident that like I could do both things. And it's like been a really good learning process, which is really fun to put yourself in a situation where there's a lot of growth opportunity. But when you have skills to do programming, whether or not you end up working as a software engineer or not, it makes you able to bring your ideas to life, at least to the level where you can like start to learn from them. And so that's been very empowering for me to have during this part of my journey.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, do you want to talk about like your startup at all and what that sort of initial journey's been like?
Yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about it. So I think some of the attendees here are in high school. Starting when I was in high school, I just like started staying up really late, kind of, I think, a mix of procrastination. Like, it was kind of fun to just play with it, try it. I was really tired a lot, it's in school, but, I just kept doing it, and I kept doing it for like about 15 years. And I realized that, it was actually causing a lot of issues for me, and that like sleeping 4 hours a night, turns out it's bad for your health and happiness and a lot of other stuff. So as I was trying to learn about my sleep, I realized there's not really a clear place to go to learn more and get support on improving it. So I've been trying to create that like support system for sleep, helping people understand like what is sleep, why do we do it, how does it work, how does it relate to the rest of your health and your life and all of that, and how can you use like an understanding of how your sleep works to improve it. And so yeah, I've kind of been working with companies and individuals to create spaces where they can learn those things and have a community of supportive people to help them work through that. So that's like the gist of it so far. It's a really fun journey. It's really fun to like take an idea and start to bring it to life in a way that helps other people. So I'm sure you have that experience at Vidcode, and like there's ways to do that at a very big company like Google, and a very company that a very small company that you join or that you start. But it's a lot of fun in that way.
Cool. Yeah, Jean, I guess because you also work for a really big company, what are some of the things that you didn't expect about working at like such a huge company like Google?
So one of a lot of the surprises I got when I first started working at Google are how individually people are very, very, very open. And this is something I was afraid of when I first started working for Google. People are very open and willing to share their knowledge because they're all a bunch of nerds. So you can literally reach out to just about anybody. And sometimes you get to reach out to like people who have invented bizarre things that like you never parts of the internet that we all use on a daily basis. Sometimes they work for this company, so you get the chance to reach out to them, talk to them, and actually pick their brain. And for the most part, they're all like very, very willing to answer your questions, which I thought was really cool. Also, what else? Just how large of a company is and how like the infrastructure at Google is very separate. There are so many different organizations doing so many different things. It's almost like a collective of people getting together to try to solve various different problems under one roof, which is also something I didn't really know to expect. So that was kind of cool.
We actually got one in from Kimberly, and it's, are there any good colleges or universities, or are there any colleges or universities with really good computer science courses that you recommend?
So I've never actually been to college, but I did really enjoy the CS50 course. I believe that was MIT CS50. Is that right? Oh, with Harvard, I think.
Yeah,
it's a free course online that we have, which I think is really cool.
Cool. I'll share that in the chat, what that one's called. Yeah, I don't know, Miles, what were your favorite computer science courses in undergrad?
Oh man, I mean, I really liked the computer graphics and computer vision courses that I took. We got to make like a bunch of sort of weird augmented reality stuff that seemed like science fiction at the time, and like edge detection and 3D UIs and stuff that seemed really out there for me as a 20-year-old. But also what I would say is that there are so many good resources for learning computer science outside of a university setting. I happened to go to university for computer science, and I had some great classes, and I met some great people, professors and fellow students. But honestly, I probably learned as much as I learned in college just on Codecademy, which is this free to use learn to code site, or Khan Academy or YouTube. And like Jean said, there are a bunch of college level courses that are available for free online. And that is something I might recommend actually before you decide to go to school for computer science, to college for computer science. Try taking one of those classes online. Kind of see what it's going to be like for 4 years, because you can do that. And so yeah, no harm in being prepared.
Along with free courses online, I was also going to suggest always check out. There's a thing called the Humble Bundle, which is the website that bundles together. Usually it's video games or books, but they oftentimes bundle together a lot of really good tech books from people like No Starch Press or O'Reilly for extremely cheap. And that's generally how I get all of my digital books, is from Humble Bundle. I stock that site and just wait for something really interesting to pop up.
Cool. Yeah, Jean, you've been on like a really interesting learning journey. Do you want to talk about like your learning journey from like deciding that you wanted to kind of go in this direction to like your current job?
Yeah, I suppose. Let's see. So I think I definitely came into this position from a direction that I guess not many people go into because I didn't. I never went to school for this. I started in retail, and then decided that I want to work with computers. So I went from retail to working at like Staples, Easy Tech, and then taking that position and working for Comcast Wireless, and then eventually, I realized that a lot of tech support positions that really can get you into the tech industry are very user facing. So I remember a lot of people saying like, we can teach you tech, but we can't teach you how to speak to people. Like we can't teach you how to communicate with people. So the communication skills I got from working retail, which is something that you don't even realize you're gaining. The skills that you don't realize you're gaining as you work retail are really useful in the future in positions like this. So I think I was able to leverage that sort of skill to push myself into tech support, and then from tech support, I managed to get a job at Google through a really cool program they have called the IT residency program. I worked for that for 2 years, built up my experience with them, and was able to get a job as a site reliability engineer after that.
Cool. So Carl's asking, like, what are some free programs to use with the 6th to 8th graders? I mean, definitely, like Rachel said, like P5, like Vidcode, Sandbox, like just like creative coding resources, like processing is free if you can download things onto the kids' computers. All of those are a really fun place to start.
I don't remember where it was, but there was this really fun Python game. It was really fun, like learning Python game, where you play this little like hero character going through a world, and you programmed his different moves as you went. I should look that up and see if I can find for it.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
I guess Glitch is also great too. Feel like you can do a lot of different things with Glitch.
Yeah, I really enjoy Glitch. I think like it's so fun to like it's the only site I found where you go from like just visiting the website to like having a live website of your own so quickly.
Yeah.
So someone asked how you would get into the cybersecurity arena. I think just like participate in those capture the flags that we were talking about earlier are like a really fun place to start doing those.
Be very, very curious about how things work too.
So there are a bunch of computer science classes watching this, mostly I think middle schoolers. They probably deal with bugs in their code. So for you all, how often do you have bugs in the code that you write, and then how do you fix them?
Every day. Even if they aren't found every day, I know they're there. Yeah, bugs are part of coding. You expect to encounter them. My roadmap for bug squashing is number 1, stay calm, because you're not going to be a good bug hunter if you're panicked. Number 2, focus on your own understanding, because you're not a good bug hunter if you don't know the terrain that you're in, or you don't know what you're looking for. And then number 3, just trust yourself. Try something. If it doesn't work, try something new. If it doesn't work, try something new. You're not going to make it worse if you take your steps deliberately and one at a time. But yeah, mostly that first one. Mostly keep calm and carry on.
Yeah. What about anyone else? Do you also deal with bugs in your code, and how do you fix them?
Sometimes you just walk away. Walk away from it.
It's the most effective tactic.
Talk to Jeff about it.
Yep.
If there's any background noise, it's because my dog started walking around. So sorry for everyone watching. That's her. She's wearing a cone right now. It's very cute and very sad. So I think I promised everyone we'd be out of here around 6:30 and switch over to the face tracking part. But if you guys want to go around and just like talk about sort of advice that you would have for any like newer coders that are starting out, maybe interested in like maybe one day starting their own companies or something like that, like working as programmers or just thinking about where they're going to school, what advice would you give them? We can start alphabetically from first name this time, so the opposite of what we did last time. So that would be Jean, Miles, Rachel, Ruthie. And I'm also going to let my dog out of here while you talk because she's being loud.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Can you repeat the question one more time?
I guess just like advice for anyone watching who's like thinking about like what they want to go to school for, or like what they should be studying if they're interested in maybe one day like starting a side project, or maybe making art with code, or going to a hackathon or a CTF. What advice would you give them?
That's an interesting one for me. So I never actually went to school for coding. So my advice for anybody who's interested in actually getting into that kind of field, from my perspective, is really just to meet as many people as you can and try to get out there and learn things. And there was always an initial fear I had before I really started going down this path, that I was afraid of, I guess, the uncertainty of it. And if I had to sort of give any advice, it's sort of go toward that uncertainty so that you know more about it. Because if you make judgments based on what you don't know, you're always going to limit yourself. So try to figure things out and actually learn what reality is, and I don't know, test yourself against it before you proceed to the next step, or in order to proceed to the next step.
And before we go to the next person, thank you. Michael is asking if anyone has worked on high-performance computers for self-driving cars, which is really specific. No one here has, I don't think, but I did have a friend, Amy, who worked on the maps for self-driving cars. And she's not here, but she spent a lot of time just like specifically working on maps. There's like a whole subculture of just like map specific programmers. So that is all I know about that world. But I don't know, do you guys know anyone who worked on like self-driving car stuff? Cool.
I don't, but it'd be cool to meet somebody who does.
Sorry, Michael. Next time I'll have Amy come join the panel. And then Addie asked if we've ever coded our own website before, and I think everyone here has. Cool. So then, who's next in alphabetical order? All right, Miles.
Okay. Advice. Okay, so this is more advice for anyone who wants to learn programming and not specifically going into it as a career. But seek out opportunities not just to learn, but to teach. Teaching people is really where you solidify your own understanding of concepts. So if you have like a little cousin or a little sibling who's interested in coding, or, you know, one of your parents or another grown-up, or a friend who's in a class with you or is curious, you know, any opportunity that you have to teach someone a skill that you're trying to learn, that's going to just cement it in there like so much faster than just learning from different people.
Cool.
I guess the next, in alphabetical order. I feel like for me, it's most important to just have fun with it. I feel like, and always pursue what you're interested in, and not limit yourself in thinking that you can't do something or it's not possible or impractical. So I feel like there are always resources out there that can help you make it happen, whether it's like the internet or like a community or like, yeah. Don't be afraid to do what you want to do.
Thanks for sharing all of those. I echo all of those things. Really encourage people to embrace uncertainty and not knowing instead of feeling scared by it, which I can sometimes fall in the trap of. And I think that really helps you become a better programmer, but also like better, just whatever you're trying to learn to do. And so it's a really good exercise. Like for me, just learning how to program and think in a very structured way helped me with a lot of other things in my life as well. So embrace uncertainty. You know, you can be your own model for what a software engineer is, you know, like, or, you know, a technical person, like, you know, no matter who you are, you have a unique set of experiences and perspectives. And so a problem that you're solving with someone else, a company that you work with, whatever, you have a unique perspective. So be loud, ask questions, join the conversation, because it's really important to have your voice heard too. Recommend all of those things. And and you can imagine who you want to be and bring that to life. And I believe in you, and I'm excited to see what you do with it. So that would be my final piece of advice.
Awesome. And then I guess one more, whoever wants to answer this, because I think it's interesting. Addie asked, what's the hardest thing you ever worked on? And I think as specific as you can get. I think the more specific, the more interesting this one is. So it's a hard one, Addie.
That is a tough one. Because I think my answer is like, everything I've been doing for the last 2 years, I've always kind of felt over my head, but I've gotten really good at that feeling. Like, I'm constantly over my head, and I kind of love it. It's like something I've currently gotten used to, and I feel every time I start a new project, it's the hardest thing I've ever done recently. But I'm also coming from a position where I literally just learned how to program like 4 years ago, and I'm still learning more and more about it. But I think being out of your, I want to say depth, but I don't know if that's the right real metaphor, but is a skill. Like, getting used to being out of your depth and learning from it is a skill that's really helpful.
Cool. Thank you all so much. Does anyone have like a final goodbye before we switch over to the coding workshop side? Thank you all so much for joining as your little characters. Cool. So this was Ruthie, Jean, Miles, and Rachel. And thank you all for coming. So for everyone who's here, we're going to start going into the coding section. I'm going to send you all a link that you can use to join that and code along. We're going to be coding like a face filter that's going to track our face. And it's going to be really fun. For a while, we were doing like a coding club every day, or like twice a week, I mean. And so this is going to be pretty similar to that. So my teammate Allie just joined, and she is going to be going through it with me, and we're going to be coding it together. So let's see. Allie, I'm going to try and maybe share my screen here, so you can see the like coding workstation as I do it. How are you doing, by the way? Introduce yourself while I get everything set up.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining. That was such a great panel. I'm Allie. I'm co-founder and CEO of Vidcode. Leandra might have told our story, but I don't think you did. I missed some of the audio at the beginning. So, but we met at a hackathon and have been building Vidcode ever since. So excited to go through this project with you guys today.
Cool. So let me try and find the best way to do this. So I think because I want you to be able to see my screen, Allie. So for everyone watching on YouTube, go ahead and visit us here. This is where we're going to be coding this project, and I'm really excited to start working on it. And then let me share my screen on your end, Allie, and see if you can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, awesome. So Allie and I are going to be pair programming this face filter. And for those of you who have never programmed or pair programmed before, it's when two people are working on a programming activity together. Sometimes they're together in person, sometimes they're not. Sometimes it'll be like Allie and I are now, where we're remote and just sharing one driver. So I'm going to be the driver here since I am the one who's going to be typing code in. And then Allie's going to be the navigator. So that means that she's going to come up with ideas and things to do. And ideally, if you're in person with someone, you would switch back and forth. We're not going to be able to switch back and forth here because of the limitations of virtual pair programming. So what we're going to be making today is something that is going to find faces on the screen and be able to like apply effects to them, like filters like you see on Snapchat or Instagram. Eventually, we would be able to do something that actually changes our face, like the filters and the lenses that you're used to, a simple one. And it's just going to be one that sort of like just finds a face and like applies an emoji to it. And you'll see how we can sort of make that more and more customized with the tools that we have. Yeah, the language we're going to be using is JavaScript. JavaScript is a really cool programming language because it's the language behind websites. So everything that we are going to be learning today, you can apply to websites. For those of you who are asking how I got here, I just posted the link in the chat, but I'll write a comment up here as well. Cool. So Allie, I actually haven't done this tutorial since we submitted it to Hour of Code. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and get started here. So the very first thing we have to do is choose a background. A bunch of these are ones that I've uploaded. But for those of you who just opened this up, you'll be able to find them down here. All of these like faces pre-created for you all. You should be able to just go to this link that I posted without signing up or anything, and just be able to follow along there. But let me know if you have any questions getting started. And basically, we're just going to go through this tutorial together, and you're going to be able to ask any questions in the chat. And it's going to be really fun. So let's start by dragging in one of these. Choose a photo that only has one face on it to start. We're going to be getting into loops later and all that craziness where we like drag in multiple faces. But for now, we should just do one. And then let me actually also, I want you guys to see me while we do this. Let me add my image output here. There we go.
Do you want to record a photo?
Oh, I'm way too big. There we go. No, I'm just gonna like put my little picture on the bottom right corner. There we go. Now you can all see me while we do this. Or so there's a way for me to pull Allie in too. But that's okay, Allie. You're just gonna be a voice for now. So which picture should we choose?
No, I would go with one of the women. Yeah, that woman with the hoodie over her head.
That's a good one. And the background's dark too, which is good. So when like trying to figure out like a quote unquote like good face, it's good when there's like a lot of contrast. That'll make it easier for the computer to kind of pick it up. So here her face is like super like in contrast to this background. And also the background isn't too complicated, which can be good as well. And I think that's true for most of these. Yeah, so this one has good contrast. This one's not as good. Yeah, and so like there's not too much going on in this background here. If it was more, you can kind of see my background. Like this isn't a great background because there's like a lot going on. And there's just a lot for the computer to potentially be confused by. Cool. So all I did to bring this in, for those of you who are following along with the tutorial, is just drag it in. And it's going to make these lines of code appear. So these two lines of code are what is making my canvas change. So I'm setting the movie type to just be an image and setting that source to the name of the file. So I could always change this here. So like if I wanted it to be that instead, I can see that like this is just called laughing.png, and I can replace it. So that's just sort of how my code is connected to everything else on my screen. So the first thing we're actually going to do here before calling in the computer for extra help is to ask ourselves, like, what is a face? And if we were a face tracking library, what would we use, or like what are the decisions that we would make to detect a face? So we're going to start just by dragging in this rectangle block to make our first face detector, which is going to be a human face detector. So the first thing I'm going to do here, if you are following along, I'll post the link in again, just because it seems like we just had some people just join. So the first thing I'm going to do is set this rectangle to be clear, because if you see when I dragged it in, there's this like big just like block here, which isn't that helpful to me. If I covered this woman's face with that, you wouldn't be able to see her at all. So here we can just do myrect.color equals clear in quotes, and that'll go ahead and get rid of the like large block and give me just this like outline that I can actually use to be my face detector. Cool. So the next thing, there's 4 properties that I'm going to be using here, that Ali and I are going to be using here to change this rectangle. The first is going to be the X position, which is where it's going to be like left and right on my canvas. The second is going to be the Y position, which is where it's going to be like up and down on my canvas. And then the third is going to be width, and then the fourth is going to be height. And those are the 4 properties that I'm going to be able to use to like customize my rectangle. Addie asked, how do you get the square? So Addie, I got this square by clicking next until this rectangle block appeared. So if you see on the top here, I'm at 1.5 out of 5 steps. So I basically clicked next until I got to 1.5. And then when I got to the step that talks about the rectangle block, it appeared. And then I just dragged it into my code. And then the code appeared, and the thing that it is making appeared on my canvas. Cool. So, Ali, I'm going to type in myrect.x. And myrect just happens to be the name of this variable here. What should I set it equal to? What number do you think?
Maybe 150.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's super good to start, and then we can always mess around with it more. That was actually really good. So the other trick that you guys can use is if you hover over the canvas, there's this like 2 numbers that pop up on the bottom. So that can help like give you a clue too, if your first bit isn't as good as Ali's was. So if X was left and right, what would up and down be? And the answer is Y. So here I'm just going to say myrect.y equals 150. And then I'm going to use that property, that .y property, to move my rectangle down. So I'm just going to write my_rect.y. And then in the comments, let me know if I'm going too fast. And then, Ali, what should I set it equal to?
Oh, man. I would probably just do 150 again.
Let's see. Let's try like 100. No, still too low. Hey, LG. If I said your name right, sorry if I didn't. And the fun thing about there being no play button in the code editor is that whatever you're doing, like, makes your rectangle move right away. So you can really quickly sort of go in and figure out what numbers are best for the picture that you chose. Zoom in a little bit. Cool. So this rectangle is something that's called an object in JavaScript. And what we're doing is editing its properties. So later on, and maybe some of you already know this and use this, you're able to write your own objects in JavaScript. And you can edit their properties. So for example, you can make like a person object. Oh, someone's asking for the link. Okay. So for example, there's like a really cool avatar project in the Vidcode gallery that's all made up of objects, and you can make a version of it, and you can use properties to change like its hair length and its eye length, eye width, eye size. You can change like what color shirt your avatar is wearing. And that's all through this object that a Vidcode coder like actually put together. So right now you're using this like pre-written object, but later on you're going to write your own. So that's sort of what is happening here with this rectangle. And this dot notation is how you're able to like access these different properties. The reason that we know about these properties is, well, right now because the tutorial is telling you, but later you can always check the reference to see the different properties. So here, I can like scroll down in the reference to see like my rectangle information, and I'm able to see like all the different properties that are there. And that's going to be true like off of Vidcode too, when you're in other people's libraries learning like different things. The reference is going to be your friend trying to figure out like all the different things you can do. Okay, so yeah, so that was an aside. So now let's use dot width and dot height to customize this rectangle further. So I'm going to write myrect dot width, and the instructions are saying 200. I think that's going to be too much. Yeah, it's way too much.
Yeah.
Should I move it down? Do we want to include her hairline or not, Allie?
Yeah, you can move it down. Definitely make it more narrow. So the height should be maybe 100.
And so like these sorts of decisions, like if we want to include her hairline or not, like how tall to make it, like do we want to include any of her neck? These are sort of decisions that we're just making in the moment as people. Like you can see here on the left, we're including her hair. So let's move that over a bit more. But like here on the top, we're not. And that feels sort of just like a random arbitrary decision. But those are the same sorts of decisions that computer algorithms are making behind the scenes all the time in our day-to-day lives. So right now, we're just kind of being the computers. So the other properties that we have are things like border color and border width. So I'm just going to write myrect.border color. I'm just going to set it to like blue. And I'm going to make it a little bit wider just so it's easier for you all to see. Way too wide. There we go. Okay, cool. So for those of you who are following along, if you are going to use these properties, make sure that your capitalization is the same as mine. So JavaScript doesn't care about spaces, but it does care about capitalization. So if you write, for example, border color or border width, the C has to be capital and the W has to be capital. And if it doesn't, you're going to get an error and nothing's going to work. But if you do get an error, let's say if I did this wrong. Oh, it doesn't even point me there. Okay, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't give you an error, but other things will. But if it doesn't change, like if you're noticing that it's not changing color, it could be because of your capitalization. Cool. So now we are in officially, for those of you who are following along, chapter 2. So we have the rectangle around the face that we made. So the next step here is to bring in the computer face and see if they do better than us or worse than us. So let me know in the chat what you think. There's a quiz here on the left, and it says, when comparing manual facial detection, which is human facial detection, so I'll just say human. When comparing human facial detection to the computer's facial detection, which of these statements do you think will be correct? The computer's face detection will be better than mine. The computer's face detection will be worse than mine. The computer's face detection will be almost the same as mine. So let me know in the chat what you think the answer will be. I don't know, Allie, what do you think I should put down?
I would say, well, in this specific case, worse.
Maybe. And so some of the things to think about, so there's no right answer. for those of you who sort of responded in the chat. I mean, I guess there is a right answer. The computer could do a horrendous job. But for this case, we don't know yet. So I guess let's find out. Yeah, a lot of people are saying 3. Probably it'll end up being around 3. But what are some of the benefits of the computer one? So let's say it's 3. Let's say it's like about the same. Like I can do as good a job as the computer. What would some of the benefits be of even using this library then? I guess one would be that it could do it faster. So if this was a video, like a security camera or something, someone wouldn't have to be there like clicking faces and doing each face. A computer could do it instead, which would be easier and potentially cheaper because you wouldn't have to pay someone to do it. And it would also just be maybe faster. Like maybe a computer could look through, I mean, it could. A computer could look through 1,000 faces much more quickly than a person, even if it's like about the same. I don't know, Allie, what do you think are other things to consider? Did I lose you?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, no, I think there's so many implications here, and yeah, the computer's getting better and better, so I would maybe even change my answer there, but no, I think you covered it well.
Cool. Yeah, Karen's saying you could quickly sort through numerous pictures, definitely. So we're going to start using face tracking now. A quick aside, this can run pretty slowly on some computers, and it won't work on Safari. So make sure you are on Firefox or Chrome. If you're switching over, just make sure that you've copied your code, and just like copy it back into the sandbox. I'll post the link in the chat again for those of you who are switching over, but you cannot use the Facetracker library on Safari. I'm sorry about that. So just make sure you use Chrome or Firefox or some other browser. And your computer might not run it super fast. So with those asterisks aside, let's check out the computer version of a face. So I'm just going to drag in face tracking here. Kristen asked, is this how the temperature scanner machines work in many buildings now? I don't think so. I think those are like getting your temperature versus like actually visually tracking someone's face. So I think it's just using, like, instead of cameras, like probably a different sort of hardware. But maybe you could probably do some kind of like facial detection, like see if someone's like flush, and like compare their color to like what it normally is, like if you're more red, but then that could potentially have its own biases in it as well. Adding Microsoft Edge might work. Yeah, I think Microsoft Edge will work. Okay, cool. So I, at this point, have dragged in my movie.facetracking tracker. So let me delete that again so I can show you what I did. So I'm going to delete that. So I went to the top of my code and just made some room. So I made some room in between my movie source and my rectangle. So I'm here on line 6, and all I did was drag in face tracking. And nothing changed yet. All it did was turn the face tracking library on. We don't want to leave it on all the time because it's kind of hard on people's computers. So we only want it on in projects that are using it. Karen asked, how do you know when to use quotes and when you don't have to? That's a great question. So you use quotes whenever something's a string. So that's going to be any sort of like human text. Like if I was going to write you a message like hello, I would put that in quotes like a string. Colors are all going to be strings. Things that aren't going to be strings are going to be like variables. So when I set a variable and then use it later, I don't have to put that in a string. And then things that are true or false. So you can see movie.facetracking equals true. True doesn't have to be in a string, and neither does false. Those are just words that JavaScript recognizes. Basically anything that's not like a number or like a coding word that either you created or is in the Vidcode library or something JavaScript recognizes is going to have to be a string. What benefits does coding have? So with coding, you can make your own projects, like the things people were talking about at the panel. So with coding, you can make your own prototypes, you can make your own websites, you can start your own company, as well as like make scripts and write programs to make your life easier. Okay, cool. Okay, so this is all the code I have so far. If anyone's work is broken, let me know in the chat because we're going to get a little bit more complicated in a moment. So the next thing I have to do is drag in this repeat block into my code editor. And all this does is add code to my project that's going to run over and over and over and over again. So let me go ahead and do that. And basically I'm doing that because the face tracking library isn't going to see the face right away. I need to give it time to find the face, and it also means that if like I was recording myself, it'll keep following me around, versus if it wasn't in a repeat loop, it would find my face once and then never follow me again. Cool. Allie, do you want to navigate this part?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, we're now going to learn a little bit about arrays, which are lists of data, and you can access them via an index. So we're going to put an array into the code editor, starting at 0, which would be the first index of the array. And yeah, so go ahead and write, var face equals movie faces 0 in brackets.
And the reason we have to do this, guys, is because there could just be multiple faces on the screen. So we're just taking like the first face it finds.
Yeah, and then inside the parentheses of the repeat loop,
where we
want that to go.
Cool. Yeah, I put it in the wrong place. So you're going to want to put it inside the repeat loop so it keeps looking for it. Cool.
Okay, now we got another rectangle, I guess.
Yeah, so let me drag that in. So one trick for everyone who's following along is that your code block is going to go wherever your cursor is. So I put my cursor on line 19 inside my repeat block, inside like my repeat code. And so I'm just going to drag a rectangle in here, and it's going to just go in my repeat loop, which is kind of cool. I'm also going to tab this in because I like all my code to be organized. So I want everything between these brackets to like be indented the same amount. Karen asked, I know order matters. Does the repeat block need to be below the rectangle parameters? Not in this case, I don't think, because it doesn't matter if they overlap a little bit. Like, I don't care if the rectangle for the computer's using is like in front of the one that I set up. I think it probably has to be after this face tracking code, because I want to turn face tracking on and then I want to start using it. Because this movie.faces parameter like wouldn't exist or work without this code on line 6. Yeah. Cool. So then the next thing I'm going to do, so when I dragged this in, I created the same exact code that was on line 8. So basically I have, if you look at these, they're the exact same, but I don't want it to be the same variable name. So this word after var is what the variable name is. And the reason I can like edit my rectangle on lines 9 through 15 is because the rectangle is stored in that variable and I'm using its name to call it and then edit it later. So I don't want to keep editing this myrect variable because it's going to mess with all the work that Allie and I did to make this cool blue box. So I'm going to change its name. I'm going to instead say comp rects computer rectangle. And I'm going to be able to edit it without messing with all the work I did with my rectangle. Okay, cool. So I'm going to be using the different properties that are stored in this face variable. So let me show you what those are. So I'm going to bring my log console up here, and I'm just going to write in this repeat function. Let's see if this doesn't break my computer. I'm going to write log, which is how I post things to the console. Let me just show you. If I write hi here, it'll just post hi a bunch of times. All right, let me stop that. So now instead, I'm going to log face, which is this face variable. If there's ever anything in your code that you really want visibility into, this log function and other programming languages, it can be called a print statement, is a really great way to do it. So I'm just going to delete these 2 lines. Okay, cool. So here it is. So I'm going to undelete clear on code change, and then I'm going to stop this so everything doesn't break. Okay, so now you can see in my console this face object and what is inside it. So you can see there's a total. I'm not sure what total means. So width makes sense. Width is the width of the face, the height of the face. Kind of interesting is that this face tracking library thinks that this person's face is a perfect square. Each one is 119 pixels. And then we have the X position. So same thing as before, left and right, except I didn't set this. This found itself. Y up and down. I don't know, Allie, what do you think total is? I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know either. I was thinking, I don't know, maybe there's some hidden layers here, but yeah, we've just got 2 squares, but yeah, I'm not sure why it's saying 5.
Cool. I don't know. Yeah, I would think maybe it's the amount of faces, but we would get that from the length of the array. Can a computer crash if you put in the wrong code? Michael asked. That is a great question. I mean, probably. Yes, but we on Vidcode try and make that really hard. So there's this idea called an infinite loop, where you can write a while loop that goes on forever. We sort of have things in place in our program to stop that from happening. But I think you could probably break anything if you tried hard enough, or crash anyone's computer if you tried hard enough. Cool. So then let's go ahead and use that property that you just saw in my log statement to actually set this rectangle. And before I do that, I'm actually going to make it clear because I don't want a giant block over her face. So the first thing I'm going to do is say comp rect dot color, and then I'm just going to say in quotation marks again because it's a string, clear. Okay, cool. And you can see it takes a second to appear. That's just sort of the library finding the face, which is why it has to be in a repeat loop, which is kind of interesting. Okay, cool. So then let me bring this down so y'all can see it. The next thing we're going to do is use the X position of the face to actually set this. So I'm just going to write the code comp rect dot X and then equals face dot X. If nothing appeared in your log, you might have a bug somewhere else in your code. So see if there's a blue line anywhere. And that might be the reason that nothing showed up. I'm not sure. You also want to make sure that you write your log statement under whatever you're tracking. So if I had written my log above where I created this face variable, nothing would have showed up. I also had to write it inside the repeat loop because when my project first loads, there's nothing stored in that face variable yet. So all the things that might have caused that. Okay, cool. So anyway, you can see I set my computer rect.x to be equal to my face.x, and here it is. So I would say that's super off. Allie was right initially that this might not do as good a job as we did. But let's keep trying. I think the hoodie is messing it up. So let's go ahead and write comp rect.y equals same code, face.y. And there we go. Okay, so it's not confused about the hoodie on the top of her head. It's just sort of confused about the hoodie on the left here. And then we can go ahead and write comp rect.width equals face.width. And then comp rect.height equals face.height. All right, and there it is. Let me go ahead and change a few things here. The first thing I'm going to do is make the border width like bigger, just because I think it's a little bit hard to see with my blue. So I'm going to say comp rect dot. First, I'm going to set the border color. I'm just going to set it to like magenta, so it's really easy to see. And then I'm going to say comp rect dot border width, and I'm going to set it to 4, which is the same as like my human one. So for those of you who are following along and maybe have trouble, I'm just going to post all this code in the chat, just in case anyone needs it. There you go. Cool. So now we're back on the first quiz. And Allie thought the computer's face detection would be worse than mine. I would say that this is worse than ours. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a little more off.
Yeah, I kind of like, and like this is a weird one because this isn't even close to her. So I don't know. I don't know what the computer was thinking here. I'm going to say it was worse than mine. So the next thing to try here is just to try like a few different backgrounds. So I think we're just going to choose a few different backgrounds and see if the computer does a better job than it did with this hoodie wearing lady. So let's go ahead and I'm going to choose, and for those of you who are following along, let me know which ended up being true for you. Did you do a better job or did the computer do a better job on yours? So I'm going to choose this dog photo. Let's see if we do better than the dog photo. Oh no. It doesn't like that. Let me delete this. Okay, so it wasn't loading with the dog photo because it can't find the dog face, which I suspected. I didn't think it was going to be able to find the dog face, but I thought it would be worth a try. Oh, cool. Karen's saying her computer did better than she did. So next, I'm going to choose this lady in a coffee shop. So this is the one Allie and I made. Obviously, it doesn't change, which is once again like, so let's see how the computer does. Does the computer see her at all? Interesting. Man, our computer is really bad at this.
Yeah, computer fail on that one.
Yeah, it's not finding her. That's interesting. So I guess this is like what we were talking about before, where like there's just like low contrast. Let's try it. I feel like this one has like good contrast. Let's see. I have all these like photos of people's faces from when I was testing this. And then let's bring this back. There we go. This guy is called Plants. Okay, there we go. It found one more. I wanted to at least find one more. So I think it did better on Plants Guy. And his is harder because his face is turned to the right. So there were like some more things for the computer to kind of decide here. Like, do you count this like ear or not? Like where, I think like the computer was like a little bit confused about like where his face ends. Yeah, so just sort of interesting, like all these sort of decisions that computers had to make about human faces. So I think we're gonna start to wrap up here. I know a bunch of them didn't work, which was interesting. Yeah, so I think we're going to wrap up here. If you keep following along on your own, you're going to get to like add emojis over faces. And then eventually in the last chapter, you're going to turn on your webcam and it's actually going to follow you around. It doesn't go super fast, but it's still kind of fun to see. Just make sure your lighting's really good. Like here, you can see here, I kind of blend into my wall. It's so hard for it to pick me up here. Like it's better when like the sun is on. It's better when like it's sunny, because then like at least I'm getting more light. Like the way it is here, I have this light set up to try and like make it find me more easily, and it still like has a lot of trouble with it. If you want to test this yourself, you can actually press this record from webcam button. I'm actually going to do this right now. And then just go ahead and click photo here, not video yet because it's going to have trouble with video. And then try and get the best lighting you can, and then try and make sure that your head isn't out of frame. I'll get my hair out of the way. And then take a picture of yourself and see if the computer can find you. So let's see. It's terrible. Okay, I'll smile. There we go. So now I have this webcam photo here. I'm gonna go ahead and drag that in. Let me delete all this code. Okay, so obviously the blue box didn't move at all because it's not smart. It's a manual box that we placed there. Let's see if the computer can find me. I don't think it'll be able to. Yeah, no luck. There's just not enough contrast. So when you do test this yourself, try and find like the brightest place that you can. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't think it's going to show up. Cool. So thank you all so much for joining. Does anyone have any questions about the activity or about like questions that you wished you'd ask the panelists that Allie and I can kind of answer for you here now? Oh, Karen's photos are working. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm jealous. It doesn't find me at all. Backpacker, it'll find. Okay, cool. Well, thank you all so much for coming today. Let me make this work again before I publish it. There we go. There we go. Okay, so it's found this woman in the street, but it couldn't find me in my room. I feel like she is no more well-lit than I was. Is this part of the curriculum? This isn't part of our core curriculum, Art, but your teacher should have access to this in the Hour of Code 2020 course. So when you're done, just press submit here. I'm going to call mine. If you're not signed in, it'll give you the option to sign up, and it'll just save your work for you there. If you're under 13, just click I'm under 13, and it'll give you a link to save your project. I am going to call this Human versus Computer Face Finder V5. I've done this at least 5 times. View. And here it is. If anyone wants to remix it, I'll post the link in the chat. And you'll be able to open it up, load it. It'll take a second to load because it always takes a second. And there should be a remix button where mine says edit. So if you kind of got lost following along or anything like that, you can just press the remix button and mess around with it using this code, which is kind of cool. Michael asked, what websites do you recommend for creating a website? I'm going to say Vidcode or Glitch. Cool. When did I start coding? I started coding, Addie just asked. I started coding probably in middle school. Like Ruthie, I was like making my own websites as well. Allie, do you want to answer Addie's question?
Yeah, I started later in life than Leandra. I started coding when I was, 26 or 27.
That's awesome. Do you remember the first thing that you coded?
Yeah, for me, because I was a photographer before, I coded processing for the first time. And I made a really cool project with a Connect and a heat map that tracked people through block detection, which is a lot like what we did face detection today, and create a heat map of kind of their, their presence. It was fun. A lot of art and technology projects.
Cool. Here, I'm going to hop back over to Gather so they can see us and we can wave goodbye. Thank you for coming, everybody. I'm going to wave goodbye with my like little 8-bit figure here by just like running back and forth wildly. Happy Computer Science Education Week. And yeah, have a wonderful winter break.